First of all, let me explain the model for approaching lean transformation scientifically, which came from Taiichi Ono and his students. One of his students, who's recently passed away, Hajime Oba, always worked with companies outside Toyota the way Ono taught him. And this is an example. He was asked to work with Herman Miller, that makes office furniture in the United States. And at that time, Mr. Oba was working in a subsidiary of Toyota set up to teach the Toyota production system to other companies. And Herman Miller asked for help. And he met with the CEO of Herman Miller. And his demands were always the same. Number one, you can't lay off anybody. You can't let employees go as a result of the Toyota production system. And number two, you have to share what you learn. And then there was a number three that he didn't write down, which is you have to do it my way. You have to listen to me. I'm the teacher. I'm the master. You're the apprentice. And the way that the master taught always was through what Toyota calls a model line, which is a part of a factory where you experiment and you learn about lean in that one area of only one factory. And then you start to spread the learning from that central place. So he asked the CEO for a plant where they needed a lot of help, but it can only be one plant. And it turns out that in a filing cabinet plant, they're losing money, and they were thinking about moving the plant from Michigan to Mexico, where there's lower labor rates. So Mr. Oba went and visited that plant. He walked the floor, and then he met with the management team, and he said, "This is my challenge to you. I walked through your plant and I learned that currently to make the number of filing cabinets you sell, you need two different assembly lines to make different models. You're working 3 shifts and you have 126 people who are working in assembly. And my challenge to you is to do the same volume of filing cabinets with 2 shifts instead of 3, and with 15 people instead of 126 people. And by the way, you're not allowed to buy any automation. So you have to do it with what you have." So this was, of course, shocking. The first reaction is people are thinking, they're not saying it to Mr. Oba because he would leave, but they're thinking this is impossible, but we'll play along. But then they're waiting for Mr. Oba to tell them what to do. All right, that's fine. So what do we do first? So instead, Mr. Oba asked them, "So what do you want to do first?" And they're looking at each other and they're kind of shocked. And why would he ask us? We don't. He's the teacher. And they basically looked like they didn't know. So he made a suggestion, which was, I noticed that a lot of people are walking around instead of assembling filing cabinets. Maybe you can start by understanding why they're walking around. So what he was doing is he was suggesting that they try to understand the current condition. What's happening now? Where is there waste in the system that we can start to focus on? And once he did that, he was done teaching for the day. So he said, "I'll be back in 2 days. Please tell me what you learned." So in 2 days, he comes back and they have sketches and they have numbers and they present it to him and he's listening and he says, "Okay, now what do you want to work on first?" And then they came up with an idea for where there's the most walking and where they might focus their attention. He thought that was fine. And he asked them what they're going to try to reduce the walking. They had a few ideas. He says, "Please try one at a time. And for each one, tell me what you expect is going to happen and tell me what you learned from it." And what he was at that point doing was asking them to run experiments, not to implement a bunch of stuff, but to try ideas one by one, experiment, and then as they learn more, the experiments will become better and more thoughtful. And they keep on experimenting until they get to the short-term goal of solving the first problem they picked. Once they did that, he asked them what the next problem was that they wanted to work on. And step by step, they found themselves getting closer and closer to the goal, the vision, the challenge he had set out. It ended up taking several years, and the result was that they ended up getting to 25 people and not 15, but they got to 2 shifts. They made everything on one assembly line. So what was happening was the coach, Mr. Oba, was developing the people in the plant. He wasn't telling them what to do, because then they would not think for themselves, but rather he was challenging them to think, and he had a framework for them to work within. And then he let them struggle, and through struggling and trying and experimenting, learn. So what he was really trying to do was he was trying to teach them not how to solve the problem of productivity of that one assembly line. He was trying to teach them a meta skill of how to achieve a challenging goal that at first seems impossible. And the starting point is to have a vision. What is it you're trying to accomplish that will help your customer? Then you ask, what is my specific challenge? And typically the challenge should be 6 months to a year out. What is it that I want the results to be that would make a big difference to this business? Not a small difference, but a big difference. In that particular case, they needed to reduce cost if they wanted to stay in Michigan. And if they reduced labor, then they didn't need to go to Mexico to get the cheaper labor. Then he asked them to understand the current condition, what's happening now in your workplace. And he wanted them not just to look at numbers, but also to observe directly, to look with their eyes, to use their senses to understand what's happening, what are the facts. And then finally, he wanted them to experiment, and he would give them some hints if he thought they were going outside of guardrails, if they're going too far out, and maybe even doing something that was dangerous or costly. But as long as they're within some guardrails, and he didn't care if they succeeded or failed, as long as they learned something. So this is about the coach not acting as an expert telling you what to do, but rather as a coach who's developing people who are going to play the game. If you're a coach of a sport, you're not out there kicking the ball. And at the time that the game is being played, you could just stand on the sidelines. And how well the team does depends on how well you develop them. And that's what Oba was doing, is developing the players through challenging and questioning and doing very little telling. Occasionally he would show them, he'd sketch out a tool, try to use a form like this. But mostly the people who worked for Herman Miller were doing the thinking. And as a result, in that particular plant, they kept improving and improving and improving. And at the end of 20 years, they were down to one assembly line. They started with 2 lines and actually 4 separate cells feeding the assembly line. They got from 3 shifts to 2 shifts. They got from 126 people to 30 people. And overall productivity went up by 483%. They also, the filing cabinets flowed through the plant from raw material to finished goods in 4 hours. It had taken them 62 hours, so about a week and a half. So everything was remarkable. In fact, one of the interesting things was that this plant became the model for the rest of the company to learn from.